What's going on, guys? Over here. Welcome back to another video today, and welcome to my F1 2016 career mode setup guide. We're going to be showing you the setups for every single circuit that I've used and that I think are pretty decent for career mode to kind of help you guys out in your personal career mode. So if you want to skip ahead, there's an annotation on screen right now. Also skip to about, I would say, 8 minutes into the video, and there'll also be timestamps in the description so you can go to each individual track you want for the setup guide there. So that will be later on in the video. For this first part, I'm going to be explaining the setup kind of menu to you guys and, you know, my thinking for a lot of the things I've done in the setups. But this is going to be a career mode guide for setup, so this is not the fastest setup you're going to find. If you want fast setups, I'm actually going to link one of my friends' channels in the description, TRL Limitless. He's a league racer, a very, very quick one, and he has done setup guides for every single circuit on time trial to get the fastest setup out there. So if you want fast setups, go check him out in the link in the description. But this is going to be specifically for career mode to find that comfortable balance for 50% races. So we're going to be looking through this setup menu right now. So we're going to look at aerodynamics first and kind of explain that to you. Now, in old games, you would naturally want, for any mode, to put down wings very, very low. In previous games, actually, it was to the extreme of like 2-1, 3-1, even 1-1 in some cases. But this year in F1 2016, they've really changed that finally. Even on last year's game, F1 2015, you could really get away with running, you know, 1 or 2 rear wing and like 3 or 2 front wing. But now they've changed it. They're kind of happy medium, and lowest you probably want to go is about 5.5. I found personally, I don't want to go any lower than 5.5 for heavy fuel 50% races, and you can go all the way as high as to 11.10 or 11.11 around places like Monaco. But I find a happy medium of basically having a balance of 2 difference between front and rear. So if you run 8, then, you know, you might want to run 6 at the lowest in terms of the rear wing. And in terms of the actual balances, if you put up the front wing, that will not change your straight line speed down the straights. The only thing that affects that is the rear wing, so take that into mind as well. But the happy medium I found was around, you know, varying from 6.5 to all the way up to 11.10, and I don't kind of stray away from that. But you'll see, you know, if you look further on in the setups, a lot of them are very similar. I think the perfect kind of, if you wanted to just have one set of front wings for every single circuit, it was 7.6 for me. That's the happy medium, but there are specific wings that you'll see in the setups for places like Monaco. So we move on to transmission. So this is the diff. So this is something new in the game. Generally, I run for most circuits 72. That was my happy medium. You need to do your own testing and find your happy medium. But basically, if you don't know what diff is, basically, if you open up the diff, it means the tires rotate at different speeds more. And so it allows you to find better traction off corners. Traction loss will be less of an issue for you. But if you lock the diff up and lock it, it will basically mean you get better traction off the corner potentially if you can control it correctly. So if you're good at throttle control, you might want to lock the diff a bit more than I do. I always put it down to about 72 because I always, you know, I think on this game I've been the best I have ever been on controlling throttle after a lot of corners, but I still struggle with it. It's still an issue that I can never do because I've got quite a heavy foot, so I always put 72 on there. So as we move on to suspension geometry, this is a lot like last year's game, a lot like most of the year's games. You put camber to the left and toe to the right. On this year's game, probably about 2 clicks to the right for toe, and then camber probably about only 1 click to the left, maybe 2 if you're, you know, if you're feeling confident with it. But basically, camber, if you do only 1 click to the left, it's still going to give you that kind of harder kind of you know, angle, you know, out on the tire, and will help you with kind of you know, straight line speed. Camber going in will help you with turning and stuff like that, but will deter from straight line speed acceleration. Then we go on to suspension. So front ride height is a new addition that wasn't in 2015. I like the fact they brought it back in. Generally, I don't go higher than about 7.7 or 6.6 even. Even in the wet, I would say 6.6 is your best bet, and don't go any higher than that. I don't see the point, because you're just going to drag down your car. The happy medium I found is around 4 to 5. You might want to put 5 if you know there's some wet sessions, but there's also some dries in there, and then 4 for the kind of tracks that don't have bumps. I've not gone lower than 3.2, so I'm not too sure about that, and I also haven't experimented with having a lower front ride height and higher ride height, because obviously rear ride height, because obviously in real life you'll see a lot of F1 cars run a lot of high rake, which basically means the front's really low and the back end's really high, and that's the kind of realistic, kind of real life thing they do with the rake. But in the game, I haven't tested it out, don't know if it really affects things, but I haven't really gone lower than 4.4, because if you go any lower than that on heavier fuel, your car bottoms out and scrapes along the ground, so you don't want to go much lower than that, in my opinion. Front anti-roll bar and rear anti-roll bar, I've kind of gone midway, maybe 5.7, 6.7, 7.7, 7.8. Generally, I have the front lower than the rear, though, but, it just helps with the kind of roll through the car, but I've not really found it kind of beneficial if you go extreme on either end. And then suspension, front suspension, I generally have that higher. That's because I'm in the McLaren Honda. So if you're in a faster car, in a top-end car, in a Mercedes-powered car, you might not want to need to do that. But front suspension higher than the rear will help out with kind of straight line speed and general kind of just speed out the corner. But if you kind of put it on softer springs, you'll be able to ride curves better. So you'll see at places like Monaco and maybe Singapore, I've run softer suspension to ride those curves. But firmer suspension will basically make also your car stop bottoming out and bouncing like a bucking Bronco, because the McLaren, especially for me, did that a lot, especially places like Barhain. It was constantly going up and down when I was accelerating or braking. It would kind of nosedive. So to stop that nosedive, you want to make it firm to kind of, really tighten up the car and not make that happen. If you go into brakes, pretty much for most of my setups, it's 80 and 59% on that. That's all personal preference, so that's something I can't really tell you guys about. I'll show you in all the setups, but you need to find a happy medium for yourself. 80% brake pressure and 59 for me was the happy medium. Tires, you can see that generally I run default 23, 21.5. I might put it one click to the left from the default sometimes if you are struggling with tire wear, but generally, default was fine for me. Weight distribution, now this is quite important actually this year's game. I think weight distribution has been the most important it ever has been on this year's game. Now, really, if you want to go the fastest way possible for like time trial setups, you actually might want to put the ballast all the way to like 10 or 11, because that will really just get you the best turn-in possible and no compromise best turn-in. But for career mode, obviously, you don't want a really oversteery car as well. So I found that for the McLaren at least and lower cars, you might want to put it on about 7 or 8 or even 9. So for me, generally as well, this year's game is very understeery for me. It's a very, very understeery game for me. So I always need the good turn-in. So I always put weight distribution to the rear. If you're in a better car, you might want to put it up into 5, because you actually might be struggling with oversteer instead of understeer because it's got enough downforce. So you might want to do that. But for me personally, I think for every car in this year's game for me, because it's a very understeery game for me, I want to put it on about at least 7, 8 or 9. But yeah, that's been the setup menus explained. Obviously, fuel load's not really factoring into it. But yeah, hopefully this guide will be useful to some of you out there. I know for 2015, it was very surprising actually to me how many of you guys were letting me know that it was really helping you guys in career mode. So eventually I've made this video after I've done one full season, so I fully knew what the setups were for me personally, my favorites. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you do end up, finding it useful, I'd really appreciate if you hit that like button. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below, and let me know in the comments below if you did go on to use one of these setups and maybe you won a race in career mode that you didn't think you could. So that would be absolutely awesome for me to hear if it was useful for you guys. So yeah, favorite it, bookmark it, come back to it. Obviously, I'll put timestamps in the description, so that'll help you guys out. But yeah, that's been this setup guide. Not the fastest setups out there, but just hopefully comfortable enough for some of you guys to use in career mode. And yeah, that's going to be it. I'll leave you to watch the setups. I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. you.